Hey there. I'm going from memory because, long story short, the hacker successfully crashed my entire system. But I think I can recreate it. So, as always, this is for entertainment purposes only. I'm not a professional therapist. I'm not a professional financial advisor. I'm not offering legal advice, anything like that. I'm not an expert. So, if you need expert advice, go find an expert. All right. So, I flew out of Dublin. It was a great trip. And I think I flew into Stansted. I can't remember. I might have flown into Heathrow. But either way, I was back at Arthur Findlay, and I was super excited. This time, I wasn't flying overnight for a 2 day class all the way from Costa Rica, and so I was well rested and all in. This one was a healing class. If you remember in the last video, or go back and see the last video about Arthur Findlay, I had taken an assessment with one of the instructors who was amazing, and she told me healing was one of my modalities. And so I was excited to see, how much I learned and dig into that gift or that talent. As you can see on the slide, I stole them off the website again, but I wanted to show you pictures of Arthur Findlay. It's such a beautiful campus, and I call it Hogwarts. Actually, a lot of people call it Hogwarts. The one picture that's missing that I couldn't find a picture of is the library. It just has a great vibe. So anyway, the building you see is the one you stay in as well and take all the classes. And you can see where we had some of the nice, events in the chapel as well. So that's what you see pictures of. I don't remember all the events that took place during this 5 day class, but let me give you some of the highlights. So I do want to tell you the staff there is absolutely amazing. I went back and was able to see my lovely person who takes care of me with registration, and she set me up with a room. I was laughing because she actually put me in the same room that Mullet had been in the last time. And it's the room that every time we try to find, we completely get lost. And Mullet wasn't with me this time. So it was always a challenge finding my room. I could get lost in a paper bag, but I have great adventures in the inner room. The other thing that was super cool for this class is, and I don't know if I explained this on the last video or not, but it bears repeating. The way that this setup is when you're having meals, you end up sitting really with the same group of people between classes. And usually there's a couple different classes going on. And so you get to meet all sorts of cool people. And that's one of the real highlights at Arthur Findlay. I got the opportunity to get to know a lot of different people. The thing that surprised me about this is at Arthur Findlay, you've got people who are town managers. I met a lovely lady who was a broadcast journalist who used to be a professional dancer. She was like a little fairy. She always danced on our breaks, and she was just such a joy to be around. There's so many people like that at Arthur Findlay from all sorts of walks of life. A GM who I think he was Italian, and then was moving to the States to go run a facility. So again, all sorts of professionals there, just really, really salt of the earth, great people from all over the globe. So again, I'm not going to tell you all the classes, but what I want to share with you is because it was a healing class, just like last time I was talking about the different exercises, there's a couple exercises that come to mind. So I'm not going to go into tons of details on it. I think it's something you should experience for yourself because everyone has their own experience. But the ones that come to mind were kind of when I learned that I had new gifts. And so there's a bunch of exercises where you get to team up with different people and do healing. And what was super funny to me, or my insights from my growth, was I talked about last time I was always in my head. Well, this time you go into meditation and then essentially let your spirit guides take over for the healing for your partner. And I have to be honest with you, once it took me a few times to do it, and it took me a few times to get into the meditation. It takes me longer than other people seemingly to get into kind of that zone. But once I got into that zone and kind of let spirit work through me, candidly, I was bored. And so basically I was just sitting there meditating all day long, every day. And it was pretty relaxing, I have to tell you. But I was like, really, this is it? And so the coolest thing about the exercises was I started to feel more and more, and I've talked about this on earlier videos, how energy works. I started to learn more and more that everyone's energy feels really different. And so one of the coolest experiences was I was partnered with this great guy. Um, and when I sat down with him and we started, getting into the zone to heal each other, it was literally like a swirl of, crazy, colorful lights. And it was like this lovely, silky, smooth swirl as our energies melded together. I remember that very specifically. Another thing that happened was I was healing another partner, and as part of it, all of a sudden I started to smell vanilla, and it was super weird. And so you don't want to talk while you're doing the healing. And as part of it, as I'm sitting there, I started to see like this field of wildflowers while I'm smelling the vanilla. It was super weird. I hadn't had that experience before. And so after the healing, and what's lovely about these exercises are the other person tells you what they felt as you're doing it. And you don't direct the spirit guides, you just basically kind of let them use you as a channel. I always say it's a bit like being the postman. You don't really get to pick the package, you don't get to pick the letter, you just are essentially the channel. And so, you don't talk while you're doing the healing. Hopefully you can follow me. I know I'm going on different tangents, but I asked her. She was such a sweet girl. I asked her after the healing session for feedback, and then I asked her if I could smell her hands. And keep in mind these are strangers, right? And so she let me smell her hands, and I was like, God, I smelled vanilla. And I told her about the vision, and she started laughing, and she shared with me that that's actually how she meditates, and that's where she goes to and visualizes during the meditation. It was kind of weird. I felt like I ethically breached her, I don't know, privacy. So anyway, it was super cool. We found it pretty funny. The other thing that happened was I healed two people simultaneously, and that was kind of cool. We always the instructors were great about like every time amping up the exercises. And so as I was healing two people simultaneously, the interesting thing was all of a sudden I started getting two very distinctive sounds in my head. Now, again, that hadn't really happened before. Not sounds, sorry, songs. And so, one of them was like lollipop, lollipop. And then, again, I don't even listen to those songs. And then another song was something completely different. Like, I forget what it was, but like some rock anthem. And as I'm doing this, you're sitting there. Again, I told you after a while I got the hang of it. And so I was kind of bored. It was fascinating to have two different records playing in your head. And so again, after the healing session, I kind of talked to them about it. And come to find out, those songs really represented kind of the personalities of the people. It was super cool and strange, and all at once. It was like having a concert in your head. I talked to the instructor about it at the time, and she told me I was just in my head. And what's super interesting about that is I've learned since that everyone has their own process, everyone has their own gifts, and what I experience isn't necessarily what anybody else experiences. And so at the time, I remember her telling me that. And because I was so new to this, again, this is last, I don't know, January maybe, or January of 2023 rather. So I remember thinking, God, that just doesn't resonate. And so as I'm at lunch or dinner, whatever the meal was, with the rest of the people at the table, they're like, no, that's complete crap. That's clairaudience. And so they gave me a label for it. And so what I've learned is, again, everyone has their own gifts. Everyone has their own talents. People experience it differently. But it was really lovely because even though I wasn't comfortable with my gifts yet, the fact that it didn't resonate or ring true to me, that it was all in my head and I was really hearing something, but I didn't really know what it was and figured it out. That was a cool experience. So the other interesting thing was I met this great guy named Wizard, and he was a good-looking guy, and it made me laugh because all the women were like basically throwing themselves at him, and you know, I was still gun shy coming out of the relationship with Hottie, but I found Wizard pretty good looking, but I didn't really know him well, and he was really interacting with a girl who, by the way, I later became friends with both of them, who was a spiritual advisor. She looked like a lovely witch. You couldn't think of someone that looked more different from me. And the two of them were, I didn't know if they were dating, what their deal was. And so, in between sessions, because I was so overwhelmed and I was still coaching, I would go outside and smoke. And one, to be in the outdoors. Two, I just need some peace and quiet. And three, I just wanted a cigarette. And so I remember, I was checking Wizard out, and at the time I didn't know who he was, and Wizard's obviously a nickname. And he came out and started to have a conversation with me, and I was so disappointed because I was so bored. I felt like I was talking to one of my clients. Super smart, right? I don't remember what we were talking about, probably banking or something. Super intelligent conversation. I would have loved to have had it any other time, but I felt like I was working. So anyway, that was kind of my first introduction to Wizard. Long story short, again, I'm going through the events kind of quickly because there were so many events that happened during it, and I just want to give you a flavor of it in context for the later videos. One of the exercises that we did in healing was in the chapel that you see the picture of. And the setup was basically, and I'm not going to do it justice, but basically they split us into two groups in circles and had someone in the center being healed. And then the inside circle next to the person being healed was going to use their guides to do the healing. Now, the outside circle, which I was in, were going to go directly to source. So we'd never done that before. Again, it was an experiment. So again, we got into the meditation. I got immediately into it. I was getting quicker and quicker, muscle memory, I guess. And I'm in the outside circle, and the entire class is there. I forget how many people, I don't know, probably over 30. And all of a sudden, like, my body went on fire. It was so hot. I had never had an experience where I had so much heat coming from source to direct in the healing. So that was really kind of cool, but my hands were on fire. I mean, I was generating so much heat. It felt like I had been in the sun for hours and hours and hours. So that was a really interesting experience going direct to source. The other thing that happened is, keep in mind, you're in a group of people who have tons of psychic gifts, right? And so, again, everyone has different gifts, but plenty of them are mediums and psychics. And so I'm literally sitting, going direct to source, baking my ass off, sending the healing to the person in the middle of the circle. And all of a sudden, I flash a vision of Wizard, and this is why his nickname's Wizard, kind of like old school Mickey Mouse doing, like, wizardry, like, Mickey Mouse does in his boxers. And so, again, I'm having a conversation in my head while still in meditation. It's really interesting to do that. But again, I had the capacity to do it by this point because I knew how to do it. I'm having a conversation with my guides and angels about, can we really pipe down now? We're in the middle of a bunch of psychics. I really don't want someone else seeing the vision like I had seen the girl and the meditation and the wildflowers. And again, for those of you who aren't spiritual, this probably won't resonate at all. But for those of you who are, this may make you laugh. So I'm telling my guides, can we stop with the vision? I really don't want to be picturing some, random guy that I just talked to quickly and, joked around with in the lunch line. In his boxers and have that vision go to the other, 32 people in the room. And it was almost like, and you'll find if you're spiritual that your guides have a sense of humor. So then the vision changed to, like, basically me, making out with Wizard in some, I guess his house. I don't know. But it turned a little bit racy. And so then I'm like, okay, can we please stop? And so, that vision lasted a couple minutes, this racy, sexual escapade with Wizard. And again, I didn't know him very well at the time. And so that was quite embarrassing and quite funny, and so that was one of the adventures while I was going through the healing class. The other really cool thing during the healing class is I ran into the instructor who was at my first session during lunch. I think it was on the last day. And she asked me, she was saying hello. She's super sweet. And she asked me a question about kind of how the healing class was going. And I remember telling her about, something that was around the meditation. And she was shocked at how much I had grown and how much I was out of my head. And it was really satisfying to see that, because she was really the one who was pushing me to get out of my head and really had pushed me and made me meditate every day. So that was super satisfying for me, both because she was so shocked at my development in such a short period of time, and also just to kind of give her a hard time about it. So that was super fun. The other thing that happened during the healing session is, because I'm still coaching my clients, and because of the time changes, I miss some of the nighttime activities where they do demonstrations. But one of the demonstrations was pretty cool. They were doing trance channeling, and so I had the opportunity to see that. The other funny thing, and I share this with people, again, people have different gifts, and so they're like, we were asked, hey, what do you see on the stage from an energy side? Now, I can't see anything. And people are like, oh, they're beautiful colors, or, oh, I can see blues, or whatever it is. And I'm like, I can't see shit. I can just see a guy sitting on stage doing trance. So again, you appreciate the different gifts that you have, and other people's modalities, because it shows you kind of the variety of the things that are out there and available. So during the time, we also have happy hours at night. And so, the nights I wasn't coaching or finished up coaching early enough, I would come down and join people for happy hours. And so, as part of those happy hours, the girl I called the beautiful witch, her and I became friends, and I hung out with Wizard and her more. And I had decided a couple things during those happy hours. One, I was going to spend some time in London, going back before I went to my next destination. And then and if you remember on an earlier video, I had made a checklist of things that I wanted to learn. And so we were talking about Amsterdam with Wizard, because he lived there. And I decided that what better way to check off my little BDSM, look at, hey, what's out there, than going to Amsterdam next. And I was super close. So I decided there and then that I would head to London for a couple days, and then also head to Amsterdam after that, for that exploration as my next stop. I always decided my next stop on my digital nomad tour, just one at a time. So that was my plan. The other thing that happened during that time, and again, the order of events, I'm getting them a little bit out of order because I'm doing it from memory. The other thing that happened was I had another assessment to see kind of where I was, what my latest messages were, and also, hey, what were some of the other modalities. As a part of that reading, I had a lovely reading from one of the instructors, and it was my mom came through, and it meant so much to me. But keep in mind, by this point, because you saw in the videos, I had started Global Divine Alchemy. I felt like I was rocking and rolling. I felt like I had really started to integrate what I'll call, the old me pre-understanding these gifts, and starting to understand how to integrate the gifts into my daily life. So as part of the reading, it came through that, and I forget how it was phrased, but basically I still had learning to do, and about my full capabilities, and that the videos would evolve and Global Divine Alchemy would evolve. And I just remember being so frustrated with that because I thought I had figured it out. Again, your ego gets in the way. Thought I had figured it out, and I was super overwhelmed. And so, because you just feel like you've got it down, you've got your arms around it, and then you're thrown for another loop. And I didn't really know what it means. And sometimes those messages are a little vague. And so I remember being super frustrated after the reading. I'm walking down the stairs. I'm really upset. I'm visibly upset. I don't know why it upset me. In retrospect, I don't remember why it upset me so much. I just think I was overwhelmed, and my eyes were tearing up, and I was supposed to walk into a class and do healing. And then Wizard was going into his class. He was in a different class. And I remember him looking at me and being like, "Are you okay?" And I was just going out for a cigarette to kind of get a hold of myself and go back in the class. And he's like, "Come here." And he gives me a huge hug. And honestly, I started bawling. I felt like an asshole, but it was a great hug. He's a big guy. So it felt like hugging a soft teddy bear that was caring. And I'm like, "Bleh." I'm sure he was like, "What the hell is her problem?" But anyway, I'm sure he wasn't thinking that. He was super sweet about it. So long story short, I headed outside, got a hold of myself, went back to the healing class. And the week, 5 days, however long it was, it honestly flew. Like the classes were so amazing. The people were amazing. I highly recommend it. And again, that's just a quick snapshot to give you a flavor of what the classes look like and the experience and kind of how talents unfold. So that was my quick trip to Arthur Findlay. And then next week I'll be talking about my trip to London and how the next step in the journey evolved. So until next time, have a great weekend. Take care.